Well, good morning, everybody. Pastor Steve here. Glad you're with me. Today we are in Psalm 114, which is a beautifully poetic psalm. And remember, Psalms 113 through 118 are important to devout Jews because they recite or sing these psalms when they observe the Passover. And it's very likely that Jesus and his disciples either recited or sang this psalm the evening they took the Passover, and he instituted the Lord's Supper immediately before, just prior to his being arrested and crucified. So it's a beautiful, beautiful psalm. And verse 1, and you can see why this would mean so much to the Jews as they observe Passover, because this is so much about the Passover. Verse 1, when Israel went forth from Egypt, the house of Jacob, from a people of strange language, that they were slaves in Egypt. They were not residents, they were not citizens, they were slaves. And God delivered them. But they were living among a people of strange language, different language, the Hebrew language, the Egyptian language, whatever it was. And in a very real way, you and I, as disciples of Jesus Christ, live in a strange land with strange people who speak a strange language. Because even though, you and I, many of us, we're citizens of the United States, believers in other nations are citizens of their nations, but the truth is none of us really belong to the nations where we live and have citizenship. We belong to to the kingdom of heaven. We're citizens of heaven. And the language of this world, even though we speak English and others here speak English, we don't really speak the same language because we speak God's truth. And I think at times we need to bear that in mind, that yes, this is where we live, and I'm happy to be an American, and we want our country to do right and be the best it can be. But never lose sight of where your citizenship as a follower of Christ really is. That takes precedence over everything else. In verse 2, he says, Judah became his sanctuary, Israel his dominion. In other words, when God delivered them out of slavery in Egypt, as a nation, Israel, Judah, became God's dwelling place. They became his people, but God dwelt among them, just as God dwells with us, as he dwells with the church, as he dwells with each of us individually as disciples. When he delivers us not from slavery in Egypt, but slavery in sin, he makes us his family, his dominion. He dwells in us and among us. And then in verse 3, he talks about the parting of the Red Sea, and then later would also refer to the Jordan River when they entered the Promised Land under Joshua's leadership. In verse 4, he talks about the great earthquakes that caused the hills to shake. What's he talking about there? Well, it's Mount Sinai, where they encamped when God gave Moses the Ten Commandments. And in part of that experience, God's glory covered the mountain, and there was a great earthquake, and the people stepped back and shook in fear. And so it's just reminding them of that significant moment in the life of their ancestors and the life of their nation. And then the rest of the psalm speaks in poetic language about how the rest of the earth should tremble in the presence of God. Then verse 8 about God bringing water on a couple of different occasions out of rock so the Jewish people could drink while they were traveling, wandering in the wilderness for 40 years due to their disbelief, their sin. And so this psalm just recounts the Exodus experience. And we were not part of that. But we are part of, you and me as followers of Christ, of him delivering us from slavery to sin and hell and death, and making us a nation. And the New Testament calls us a holy nation, a people of God's own choosing. We are His possession. He dwells among us, and we speak His language. And I just want to encourage you, with all the divisiveness in America, all the different issues and the politics and all of that, as you participate in life in this country, Don't get so caught up in this country stuff that you forget your true country stuff. You belong to the kingdom of heaven. And that changes how you feel and think about everything. Well, this psalm was a blessing to me. I hope it was to you as well. God bless you. And I'll see you tomorrow as we wrap up this week and look at Psalm 115.